Well, hey there, everybody. Brian Goulet here of gouletpens.com, and it's episode number 214 of Goulet Q&A. And we've been a little bit busy in the last week with our new website. If you haven't seen it yet, go check out gouletpens.com. It's maybe not night and day difference from what it was before, but we did change some things. It's live and it's active, and we are getting all kinds of feedback. It's really good, though. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, this transition's gone really, really smooth. I know we're dealing with some issues, there's some bugs and stuff like that, as there would be with any platform migration like this. If we didn't just like refresh the page on the website, we completely moved platforms, moved providers, everything. It was a huge move. And the way that you can tell that we did it pretty well is the fact that it's not that catastrophic. You're still placing orders, you're still doing all the good stuff that you do on our site. But, you know, on the back end, it has like really changed some of our own internal processes, as we knew it would, and we tried to train and prepare for. But like anything else, once you kind of move in and start to get settled in, you're like, oh yeah, okay, this feels a little bit different. Or you start to run into certain issues. You're like, oh, I could not possibly have foreseen these. So we are working through that right now. Your patience and your graciousness is really appreciated right now. My team is working really hard. They're doing really, really well. My team has really stepped up this week. Had some, you know, people being out and personal things and kids getting sick and stuff on top of it. It's like a perfect storm of stuff. It's like, you know, of course that stuff would happen this week, but my team's really trucking along, and you all as our customers and fans, you're really helping to encourage my team a lot. So give them a little bit of love because they would surely appreciate it. So we got some cool things in. We got in the Stipula Passaportos. Finally, it's been a while. I showed them in right now, and I didn't even think to grab one. You know, it's like we have a bunch, and mine has gotten passed around a little bit, and I currently don't have it, darn it. But anyway, I did it in right now on Monday, so you can check that out with Drew. We showed Opus 88, and then we showed what's it called? Passaporto. So that's a pretty cool little pen. We've been waiting for a year and a half for that pen to come in. I think it tops the list for longest product that we've had on our website that has yet to come in. So that one sets a new standard that hopefully will never be matched. But it's a pretty cool little pen. You can check that one out if you are interested in a pocket pen. And then speaking of pocket pens, I had Katie on. Katie is our one of our fulfillment supervisors. She works with Adam, and so she was on. She's a fan of pocket pens. She was on right now on Wednesday. If you would like to have a little banter about pocket pens, you can see what Katie's got going on there. Some other new things that we got. The Pelikan M205 demo. Truth be told, I did not know this pen existed like 2 weeks ago. But here it is, which is pretty cool. It's like a clear demonstrator, and it's like, you know, Pelikan has had some M200s and M205s that have been, you know, translucent with just like a little bit of kind of smokiness to it, like the aquamarine. The amethyst was like that a little bit, and I'm like, okay, cool. So I always wait to get them in. I'm unboxing it right now and just keeping it out of frame, but there you go. So it comes in this nice little pouch. Like all of their higher end Pelikans kind of come in this little pouch, and the M205 does too, which is pretty cool. So it's really a clear demonstrator pen with rhodium trim. Looks really nice. The clear and the rhodium, to me especially, just look really, really crisp. And it's a very, very clear, crystal clear pen. I'm gonna see if I can focus on it here instead of my face. The camera has been kind of had a mind of its own recently. There we go. So as you can see, very clear pen. Not a huge pen. I mean, I have pretty big hands. My hands are about 8 inches long. So this pen is on the smaller side, as all the M200s are. But you know, all the goodness of Pelikans. You get to see really clearly how the piston works, and that's as far as it goes back, by the way. But you can see how the piston works. You can see the nib and all of the ink that's going to get in your cap eventually if you carry it around like I do. And the nibs are removable. The nib units are removable, and you can see exactly how that works because it threads right in there. It's very much a demonstrator pen. But it does have a little bit of injection molding spots here right in the grip. So if you're looking for like 100% crystal clarity, just be aware that those spots are right there. But you can get that in an assortment of nibs that I'm failing to remember offhand. I believe it's extra fine, fine, medium, and broad. I'm not sure about the stubs on this one. I would have to check the site, and I failed to do so, so I apologize. We've had a few things going on, but we did get these in on Monday, and we have these available for you right now, so you can check those out. I will package that up later. Get that out of here. And then another really cool pen that we have is the Visconti, we do have a Visconti, but the Lamy 2000, oh my gosh, my memory. Lamy 2000 and double broad came in. So we were supposed to get that in when we got the oblique broad and the oblique double broad last week, but the double broad just decided to keep us anticipating a little bit longer. But we do have the double broads now, and it's like very stub-like. It feels amazing. So if you like double broads, it's pretty much like the only one that we have. So you can check that out. We're not going to have a regular stock of it. So if you're interested in that, I would move fast if I were you, personally. Not trying to oversell anything for you here, but that is just reality. We've never had a double broad Lamy 2000, and I don't know when we're going to get them again. Speaking of overselling you on something, we also got in the Visconti Torpedo, which this is a limited edition pen that comes in a special box, this kind of glass top, cool looking box. You may have seen similar looking boxes with other limited editions like the Daedalus and stuff like that, but this one is for the Torpedo. Really cool looking pen. So this is a pressed carbon fiber, I believe is what they're calling it. So it is not a carbon fiber weave like you typically have. Drew and I talked about this one right now a while ago, but it's a huge pen, heavy pen, very, what's the word? I don't know, ornate maybe isn't the right word, but it stands out. I'll try and get you a close-up of the material itself here. It's really cool material for anybody who's a fan of carbon fiber. So it's literally just like carbon, it's just straight up carbon fiber, not a weave, not any kind of pattern. It's just like, just a straight shot of carbon fiber. It's got an ink window in here with the power filler, and then ink window on the body, as well as ink window here at the grip. It's got these nice fat threads, very smooth threading action, and then it's got the large size palladium nib. Actually, in terms of comfort of the pen itself, it's pretty darn good. I wouldn't use it posted personally, just because it's really kind of heavy that way. But using it just as is, it's long enough and it's cool. It's clearly not like a daily carry for most people because it's pushing $2,000. Yes, I did just say that, but it's a really gorgeous pen. It's actually been fairly popular so far. I've had a few of you interested in it. So we have a couple of those. We actually sold out of several of the nib sizes already, but we're gonna restock those if we are at all able. Very cool pen. Cool stuff coming from Visconti. That one, and as well as the Il Magnifico, like on their game. Conklin, let's change gears a little bit. Conklin has given us the opportunity to put some OmniFlex nibs, which is the flexible nib that was on the Duraflex. So the Duraflex was like that specific model of pen, and that's the black with the rose gold trim on it that we had a little while ago. So those are gone, but we do have some other Conklin pens, other models like the Duragraph and the All-American, that are going to have the OmniFlex nib on it. It's going to be kind of a limited batch of sorts because they're actually going to be changing over some of their nibs. They're kind of in flux, in transition there. That's why we have like some pens that have Goulet nibs on them and stuff like that. We kind of did that as a tie over until their new nibs come. But expect those to be coming out next week with those OmniFlexes. So that should be pretty cool. And hopefully by the time this video publishes, we will have already published our Flex Pen video. So we did a Fountain Pen 101 on Flex nibs, which is long overdue. A lot of you have been asking for it. Drew and I sat down together and tried to exhaust basically everything that we know and put it together in a really concise fashion. Andy worked really hard on all the B-roll and getting good shots that show what we're talking about. I'm really proud of how this video came out, and I think it's going to really help educate you and answer a lot of your questions. So definitely check that one out. That'll be one for the ages. And then we do have a few other pens. I kind of mentioned the Goulet nibs. So we have the Monteverde Regatta Northern Lights. We have the Monteverde Nebula, and then the Conklin Nozak Israel, which we put some Goulet nibs on. So these are our Goulet Yovo nibs, nice nibs. Very popular, nice writing nibs. Of course, I'm biased, but I would say that's pretty universally accepted that way. We put them on those pens with, of course, Monteverde and Conklin's permission, in the absence of having, you notice like we're out of stock of basically all their other pens. But since we had some of our own nibs, we were like, hey, can we do a little switchy swapperoo? So that's what we did. And so you can see some of those. So those are going to be kind of a limited deal as well. Of course, on all their pens, you're able to swap the nibs anyway, so it's something that you could technically have done yourself prior, but now we're having it with the pen on there. So that's kind of cool. And then the last thing I want to mention before I get into questions for this week, so we are starting a contest. It's a joint contest that we are actually not hosting. We are like a guest participant into this contest, hosted by Getaway. So it's called the Ultimate Unplugged Writers Retreat. So Getaway is a company that does what they call tiny cabin rentals. So they focus outside of Boston, DC, and New York, and they have these tiny cabins that have no internet, no connectivity really to the outside world. I guess if you have your cell phone, you could use that, but they're in fairly remote locations, so maybe not even good cell phone service. But the idea is people in those metropolitan areas can get away, escape, and kind of reconnect with each other. It's meant to be kind of like relationships and families and stuff like that can rent these little things, and you are out in nature and you are not bombarded by social media and all these types of things. So it's really kind of an interesting thing. So Getaway is hosting this thing, and because it's like a writers related thing, a lot of the people that are plugging into this are writing related. So we will be a participant. We contributed a pilot vanishing point and a traveler's notebook, so you can get excited about that. And then Getaway is doing a 3-night tiny cabin rental outside of Boston, New York, or DC. $600 of transportation. There's a $500 Low & Sons Catalina Deluxe Weekender bag. Signature reads book curation, a general assembly credit towards classes on digital marketing is in there too. That one I guess you'll have to do before or after your getaway, but so there's like a bunch of us that are kind of getting in on this thing and doing this like crazy prize package thing. So if you're interested in that, we'll have a link on our blog and we'll have a link on our website as well. But you can also just kind of Google, I guess, Ultimate Unplugged Writers Retreat and go find that out. All right, that is it for the things that have been happening for the week. Now I'm going to get into the questions. I got 9 questions for this week, and Andy gave me a challenge to try and get it done in 45 minutes. So we're going to see how I do. You already know because this video is already done, and I'm at 14 minutes already. So we will see, though I had a little bit of banter in the beginning for Andy that she's probably going to cut out. Anyway, I'm wasting time right now. Let's do it. Pen and writing questions. This is from Josef B on Facebook. Brian, I love all your Goulet No. 6 steel nibs, especially the Stub Nibs. I'm looking for something with less width than the 1.1 stub for my daily writing, maybe something like a 0.7. Do you have a recommendation for me? Thank you. The interesting thing about one little side note I'll make, the width that you're seeing, the 1.1, that's not actually the line width. That's the nib width, because the nibs are rounded and you're not actually going to see a line width that's exactly the width of the nib itself. You're probably getting something more like a 0.8 or a 0.9 out of that 1.1. So if you're looking for a 0.7, you're actually going to get something more like a 0.55 or 0.6, just for your general information. But there is really a shortage of sub 1.1 millimeter kind of like measured width nibs out there, quite honestly. I really don't have many, so this is going to be a short answer. Nemesign has a 0.6 and a 0.8, and they're pretty decent nibs, quite honestly. And they're No. 6 size, so you can actually swap them onto pens just like you would a Goulet No. 6. I don't have any Goulet ones. We get our nibs from Jovo. Jovo doesn't make a sub 1.1 that I'm aware of, unless I eventually get big enough we're gonna have some pull and get like a custom nib made or something, but they don't have any like stock ones that we can buy from them to be able to do that. And same with like other brands that you see that offer Jovo. I've never seen Bach with one either, so really unless somebody does it like kind of custom, I haven't really seen it. The one that I have seen is Pilot has some of these hand lettering sets. So these are based on the Plumix pen, which I have, the pens outside of the box right here. So this is the hand lettering sets. They have a fine, medium, and broad nib is what they call them. But the actual measured width, the medium that we have is like a 1.0. That's what we sell as our regular Plumix. But then the fine one is actually finer than that. So here they actually have the medium listed as a 0.58 on the back. Now that's the actual line width that it's going to put down. And then the fine nib goes even finer than that at a 0.44 millimeter. Of course, that's going to depend on your paper and the ink that you're using and how it's going to flow and stuff like that. And then here it has the broad as 0.70. So, you know, these ones will get a little bit finer. You know, it's a $30 set. You're getting 3 pens. So the nibs themselves are not going to be like of the caliber that you would get maybe of like a custom ground gold nib somewhere that, you know, you could get from a Nibmeister or something like that. But short of going like the custom route, this or Nemesine is pretty much going to be the only options that I can think of, unless, you know, please leave in the comments if you know of any other brands that have these. I really was failing to recall anything besides these 2 pens really that have them. So short of these, the nice thing about these is that you can actually pull these out. So like, you know, you just pretty much friction fit, you yank it out. Pilot's nibs are proprietary, but you can swap them on some other Pilot pens, like the Metropolitan. You can put it on the Kakuno. You can put it on the Prera, the Plumix, of course. The Penmanship, it's not one that we have, but it's around. So you have some options there. But, you know, still, it's not a ton of pens, and they don't sell the nibs separately, so you'd have to buy the set and then swap it on. So it's like you're spending 30 and then a Metropolitan is maybe 15, 18, whatever. And then so you're into like the 40s, 50s to be able to get that particular arrangement. Maybe that's not your vibe, but maybe it is. I don't know. Of course, the other option you can go is you can take whatever pen you have, send it to a Nibmeister like Mark Bacchus, and you can you know, have him custom grind it to whatever the heck width you like. Unfortunately, I don't have any of the others, but that's what comes to mind. If you have any, I would love to know what they are. DJ Papas on Twitter, do you believe the material used to make a feed influences ink flow? It seems as though a more flexible material, for example ebonite, would produce a more generous ink flow. And if it does matter, why isn't it a characteristic you include for each model? So, you got a couple questions in there and I will unpack them. Do I believe that it influences ink flow? Yeah, it can. You know, especially because back in the day, ebonite was the material that was used. It's a hard rubber material. It's hygroscopic, so it actually assists in capillary action. The only problem is it has to be machined, so it you know, takes a little bit of work to make that happen, and that drives up the cost. So you don't see that on a lot of pens, especially kind of the more mass-produced pens. You see that on more of the higher-end pens. You know, for example, Aurora is one brand that has it. Omas, rest in peace, had ebonite feeds as well. You'll see this on some higher end pens, but really you're in like the $400 and up range. So they have an ebonite feed. Namiki has ebonite feeds. But is it worth spending that much just to get an ebonite feed alone? No, of course not. But you know, the modern feeds, the plastic ones, they are definitely not the same as ebonite. They're decently reliable. Otherwise they wouldn't use them. And there's all kinds of techniques. I read up way more than I needed to about feed history. You know, Richard Binder has a really good website that has some of this kind of stuff on there about like Waterman and originally their feed and basically how they kind of pioneered the way, the Waterman Ideal fountain pen, and how that was really, he put a patent on his feed design, and it was really kind of fascinating. So props to Richard for putting that kind of history together on his site. But it can make a difference. It's not the only factor though, but all else equal, ebonite will flow better than plastic. These days there's a lot of different engineering, a lot of different things that manufacturers have discovered to be able to mass produce feeds that are, you know, good enough. And, you know, in some people's eyes. Is it the perfect thing? No, ebonite is better. It doesn't necessarily have to do with it being flexible. So it's a hard rubber material. It's not necessarily flexible. It's pretty darn tough. The nice thing about ebonite though is you can heat it up and then it becomes soft and then you can move it. So, you know, the nice thing about ebonite and why it's often just better is that when you fit an individual nib to a pen, you can heat up the feed just through hot water, or you can technically use air heat, and then you press it onto the nib. It is really setting it exactly to that nib. Can you do that with plastic? Yes. It's not as easy to do that though, and it's not quite as reliable. So ebonite's really easy to do that, and you can do it over and over and over again. Plastic, not as much. So really it's just ebonite and plastic that are your options. I haven't seen any other feeds made out of anything else. Not to say that there couldn't have ever been throughout history, because I'm sure, especially in the earlier days of fountain pens, there was all kinds of experimentation that probably happened to see what material was best. But in my 9 years of doing this, I've never come across anything that hasn't been either ebonite or plastic in the way of a feed. And then let's see here. Why don't we have it as a filter on our site? We try to advertise it when a pen has it. Part of the reason we don't have it as a filter on our site is because we just don't have many pens that have it at all. So it's really pretty much, it's Aurora, Noodlers, and Namiki, and that's it. And that's it. So not all Aurora pens, like the Ypsilon doesn't have it, but basically all the Aurora Gold Nib pens, they have ebonite feeds. So Aurora Gold Nib pens, all Noodlers pens. Omos did have it back when we carried that. We don't have it anymore, and Namikis are ebonite. That's it. So does it need to have a filter on the site? I mean, it would filter out like most everything on the site. It's something we can talk about. You know, I can talk to Rachel and see, because we do get asked about this time to time. That's why I wanted to have the Q&A question. But you know, it's usually like part of the draw of the pen, you know, because it's one of the more unique aspects of the pens that do have it. But it's really so rare, and you know, for most people, it's probably not the foremost thing on their mind. But I'll give that some thought as far as putting it on as a filter or something like that. All right, justus.castillo on Instagram. Do you find that the tastes of pen and inks go with your team members' personalities? You know, truthfully, it's like all over the map. I think my team probably represents a good cross-section of the general pen community, maybe erring a little bit on the side of the millennial end of it. But we got, you know, a decent spread as we're aging up as a company. We're getting a little more diverse, but you know, it's in terms of personality styles, we definitely have a good diversity of folks. And you know, it's really interesting because when you start to dissect what someone's pen and ink preferences are, you know, sometimes it'll either reveal something about a person or it won't reveal a single thing, and it's like peeling away layers of an onion. You know, like me, for example, I guess it's kind of fitting my personality in that I'm very opportunistic and exploratory, but like, I mean, I like blue, so I lean towards blue, but I have an extremely diverse collection of pens, and my inks are all over the place, maybe leaning a little bit blue. But, you know, on any given day, I might use an orange pen that has green ink in it, or I might have a, you know, very traditional classic, like brown or black pen that has shimmering ink in it or something. You know, it's like, and members of my team, some of them really settle in. Like some of them, it's like, they stick with one thing and that's it, and they're good. And that kind of matches their personalities. Other people, they just like to explore, and like they're very straight-laced in most areas of their life, but they end up just having a really exploring, what word am I trying to find here? Explorative, exploitive, no. Just a very, they like to explore in their pen hobby aspect of their life, but maybe not so much in others. So the truth is, I have no recognizable pattern for the people on my team. I'm sure if I took a more scientific approach towards answering this question, maybe I would have something else for you. But the truth is that pen people, you know, are just as diverse in their pen collections, I think, as like the general population is about clothing or food or whatever other interests that they may have. I think some people are going to reflect their personalities. Other people, you're going to get really surprised, and it can kind of be all over the map. But the thing I will say about having met a lot of different pen fans, I've never met two who are identical in their tastes. Even if they have somewhat similar personalities, in their own kind of pen journey, they might overlap in certain areas. They might be kind of a Venn diagram where there's like certain pens and inks that they'll get really excited about, but usually it just ends up taking all different kinds of forms, and they just kind of go on their own very unique path, which I think is part of the most interesting aspect of the fountain pen hobby. Is there's so many options for pens, ink, paper, all that kind of stuff. You get to express, it's like a fingerprint, like you get to express your completely unique taste and personality in your own pen exploration, and it's never going to be absolutely identical to somebody else's tastes. It's really fascinating, and I just love kind of that human aspect of this whole pen hobby. It's really kind of cool, but something interesting to think about. All right, cushing.ethan on Instagram. What is your favorite pen that's never been sold on your site? I've been asked like variations of this question before, but I thought this was a slightly interesting take on this one. I have like some like limited editions and stuff like that, you know, I think are really kind of cool or just really funky or interesting. But, you know, I don't know if that's necessarily fair to say this because I've never like had them in my possession, so I cannot really call them my favorites or just ones that I think are kind of interesting. The one that I think that I brought up a couple of times before, but the one, and this could change over time too, by the way. If I watch something 2 years from now, it's very possible I could have some other pen I've discovered. But the one I think that would have to take the cake for me at the moment would be the Conid brand pens. I have a Minimalistica. It's all clear. And I'm just fascinated by the engineering of this. I think the Conid company is pretty cool. And this pen in particular, I just love fiddling with it. Like, I'm a pen fiddler. I've shown it before, but I'll show it again. So the way that this pen operates, it's got a really cool filling system. And you twist it on the back, and then you screw the rod into the piston seal in the back. And then you can, it might stick a little bit, and then you can go down, and then it's like a slide piston basically. And then it locks into the back as you unscrew it. And then it goes down. So it's sort of like a hybrid between a piston and a vacuum filler. So it allows you to get a ton of ink capacity. It's got a little plug there so it doesn't end up burping and leaking a lot. It's demonstrator, it's just really cool. And it's got very much like this kind of torpedo shape, kind of like a Lamy 2000 of sorts that I really find appealing. And I'm totally fascinated by this pen. So I'm just like waiting for Conid to get big enough where they can retail, sell wholesale to retailers like me, and then I can carry their pen. So hey Conid, if you're watching, I'm being very patient, but I would love to carry your pens. Anyway, so I'm fascinated by that, but I think that would have to be the one that I've never sold. I have no affiliation with Conid officially whatsoever, other than just I think it's a really cool engineered pen. So you should check that out. All right. Next question is from oogleatluxury at Instagram. It looks kind of like oogleatluxury, but oogleatluxury I think is what it's supposed to be. I'm planning on making a custom leather sleeve with a magnetic closure for my fiance's favorite brand new pen, his Pilot Custom 823. Great pen. Will the magnetism hurt any mechanisms in the pen? I say magnetism weird. Magnetism hurt any mechanism in the pen. Is it going to hurt anything? No. That's pretty much the short answer. No, you're good. But I don't do short answers here, right? Like, I was joking with Andy beforehand. I was like, I could just say the short answer is no and move on. But I'm not going to do that because that's not how I roll. You guys know after 213 of these, soon to be 214. Anyway, so I have a little magnet here. This is actually like a little Visconti magnet thing for like taking out the tops of my pen system, but anyway, in case you happen to recognize that. So I took a magnet to it, and it's like, there's not a lot of magnetic parts to this pen. Basically, I mean, it's mostly resin, but the metal parts, there could be some in here. I did a little research because I was like, what metals are magnetic? So I like went on and I was like, oh, okay, ferromagnetic metals include iron, nickel, cobalt, and some rare earth metals. Okay, I don't think there's a lot of rare earth in pretty much any fountain pen. But iron and nickel maybe, especially because they're used a lot in alloys, especially in stainless steel alloys. So I was kind of like clicking around, and I was like, is there any magnet? There's a tiny bit of magnetism in the center band. It could be that maybe there's some alloy that's underneath the gold plating on the center band. That's possible. It has a solid gold nib, so there is no magnetic quality here at all, so there's nothing to worry about there. But there is right here at the back. And then the rod itself, which is stainless steel, some variation, there might be some nickel component to the stainless steel. It's common that there's some in there. It'll stick to the rod. But is that going to do any harm, especially if it's like on a pen case? No, it's not going to do any harm. I mean, there's pens with magnets built into the cap, like built into the pen, like Peniter, for example. I mean, you're literally like gripping a magnet and holding it in your hand. I've never once heard of anyone that's had an issue with their pen because of any magnet being close to it. You know, maybe some electronics and stuff you would need to worry about, but not a pen. So really, you got nothing to worry about as long as you, don't put it too close to your cell phone or something, I guess. But I think you'll be just fine. You can go ahead and make your fiance his awesome pen sleeve that you're going to make, which I'm sure he'll appreciate coming from you. And then that'll wrap up his awesome pen. that you got him. So I don't know if you got it for him, but that he has. Either way, you're good. All right. Next question is from noctriwina on Instagram. Looking to get into fountain pens, and I know I will need different nibs. You're on a good track. You already know what you need, right? Should I go for the one with easily changeable nibs, like a TWSBI 580, which is expensive, or buy several cheaper ones with different nibs, like a TWSBI Eco? On one hand, changeable nibs sound cheapy, but will I be bothered changing them? And maybe one pen per nib is more efficient in practice. Yes. This is kind of the age-old question. Should I buy multiples of something cheaper or spend a little bit more on something that I may use? So in this instance, it would actually be the cheaper option for you to buy the more expensive pen with the interchangeable nibs, like the 580. However, if you do that, then you are not going to be able to use more than one pen at a time, which to a normal, probably pen using person, you're like, why would you need more than one pen at a time? Do you plan on writing more than one thing at a time? But you know, probably, and those of you who didn't ask this question, you definitely know you need more than one. You want more than one pen. If you start to get into this hobby, you're gonna want more than one pen inked up at a time, probably. Not everybody's like that, but probably. I mean, the thing that's really nice about being able to buy individual nibs is being able to swap them out, especially in the beginning when you're new, and you learn what your nib preference is kind of off the bat. So that's really nice, but that's really kind of like you do that and then you'll find your preference and then you won't really use the others quite as much. And then you just have nib units sitting around that you can't really use as much. It's a little bit of a pain to change them out, not a lot of a pain. You know, you're gonna clean out the pen anyway at some point. When you clean out the pen, you just decide, oh, I'm gonna change out the nib unit, and you change it. It just, especially with TWSBI, it just unscrews right off the pen. I don't have a full-size 580 here, but I can demonstrate it at least with a TWSBI Mini. You just unscrew the grip section like this, take the other one, and you screw it in place. It really couldn't be much easier. But the Eco doesn't do that. However, the Eco is only slightly more than the nib unit for the 580 anyway. So this is really going to be a matter of personal preference. Very specifically to the two pens that you asked about here, the 580 and the Eco, I personally like the Eco a lot. I really like that pen a lot, and I think all else aside, just purely talking functional, I would go the route of getting multiple Ecos, because then you have the ability to keep them inked up with different inks. You can, maybe keep a broad nib inked up with a shimmer ink or something like that you plan on using slightly more sparingly. Maybe you don't want that as like your daily note-taking pen, but then it's a broad nib and that's okay. Maybe your fine or your extra fine you want to keep with your more straight-laced ink, like a Noodler's Black or something like that. That might be more your daily carry. I think you would get slightly more utility of having multiple whole pens with different nib sizes than you would just having interchangeable nibs, but that's really going to be a matter of personal preference. You know, the 580 is a great pen and I would not knock it at all. I think the quality of the Eco is phenomenal and is almost on par with the 580, which is why I might encourage you to go that route. But as a fundamental question, you know, I think it's something that unless there's a huge price disparity, like, you know, if you're looking at, you know, $100 pen that has a number 6 and you can get a Goulet nib for $15 instead of spending $100 on a whole new pen, okay, now we're talking, there's a bigger difference there. But between a 580 nib unit and an Eco, the prices are just too close. I would say go with the whole pen. But by all means, do what you want and you be you. All right, NJEN on Twitter says, would fountain pen enthusiasts, your typical customer, enjoy attending a pen show? Or are these shows geared to retailers and serious collectors? So the retailers at these shows would be more likely to probably have a table there, not really go there to shop or attend the show as a guest. So it's really not geared for retailers. I know a lot of like trade shows and stuff like that, you would typically have manufacturers reps who would go, and then retailers may go to check out prospective products and things like that. That's really not what fountain pen shows are about. You might see that a little bit every now and then. You might see, Jaffa may be there with Monteverde and Conklin. You may see Kenro there with Montegrappa and Aurora. So you might see some manufacturers there, like Canalea, you might see them. But really they're all there to talk directly to pen users, not to talk to retailers, because retailers are spread all over the place. There's really not a lot of retailers that are traveling to these shows to talk to manufacturer reps. That's not what they're for. That's not the type of kind of trade show that these pen shows end up being. I know that's very typical in a lot of other shows, jewelry shows, and even like the National Stationery Show. That's a lot of what's going on there. There's manufacturers of greeting cards and stuff like that, and retailers will go there to check out brands and new products that have been made to talk about what they should buy and carry in their stores. But that's not what these fountain pen shows are, like the DC show in Chicago and LA and San Francisco, and Raleigh just happened. I didn't go to Raleigh, but Drew did. So you'll see some of that. But even if there are manufacturer reps there, they're there to talk to you all and get a pulse on what the actual people buying, the end people buying these pens, are your opinions and stuff like that. So that's really what those shows are for. So it's really open to everybody. Now, are they geared for serious collectors or newbies? I would say most of them tend to lean towards collectors, but that is definitely not as heavy as it used to be, partly because I think just with the internet and social media and bloggers and various, pen celebrities, if you call it that, are talking so much about these things. I think it's the accessibility is so much more there. The information is so much more abundant now that the average kind of enthusiast can get excited about a lot of the things that are at these shows, and you can attend and have a really great time, even if you're not a deep collector into a specific brand or style of pen. Now, if you're a serious collector, you definitely will enjoy going to a pen show because, and I don't have to tell you, because if you are one, then you already know probably, but if you're a serious collector of a very specific pen or something like that, you can go, you can talk to people that are super knowledgeable and eat and breathe this stuff. That's the people that go to these shows. And you can also find some really obscure stuff, especially if you're into vintage, pen repairs, that type of stuff, then you definitely want to try to go to pen shows because there's a lot of that kind of stuff there. There's decent amount of modern stuff. It's not always the latest and greatest of the whole selections of everything, but there's a really good representation. The nice thing about fountain pen shows is pens are small, so you can bring a lot of pens with you in a relatively small amount of space. So there's a lot of vendors that go to these things and they'll bring hundreds of pens, and it's not too burdensome for them to carry around. So you will go and literally see thousands and thousands of pens at these shows, and you'll probably, even if you go to a small show, it's probably going to be overwhelming for you if you've never been to one. First show I ever went to was the DC show, which apparently is the biggest. I've only been to the DC in Atlanta, and Drew went to Raleigh, so by proxy I would say I have intel into Raleigh. I can't even say that I have any affiliation with Raleigh, but Drew went to Raleigh and he said it was only maybe slightly smaller than Atlanta. So I have some perspective on 3 different shows. But anyway, I would encourage you, especially if a show is near you, like within a day's driving distance, like you can drive there and back in the same day, you should definitely try to go. And if you're like a pretty decent enthusiast, if you like casually use a pen, would you enjoy a show? I don't know, it might be a little deep for you. But if you are like pretty into pens and you think it'd be really cool to like go and hang around other pen people, it's just an experience. Even if you're not super deep into it. I found the experience fascinating from the get. So pen people are going to be really helpful. I think if you're a serious collector, then they have like trader days, Trader, not Tritor, trader show days. That usually happens. Not all shows have them, but like DC, for example, they'll have like Thursday and Friday will be trader days. And then you'll have your weekend pass, which will be kind of for the general population, so those who are serious collectors and looking for very specific things, you basically get early access to the other collectors and stuff that will come early to the show, and you get to trade all that stuff. And then the general public comes on Saturday and Sunday. So And then sometimes there's auctions at these shows too. The auctions are really good for collectors as well because they have usually like batches of pens, and you get to go and collect and rifle through them and resell them and stuff like that. Yeah, I would say if you have access to go to one of the general kind of public days on a weekend of a given pen show that happens to be mildly near you, it is quite an experience, and I think you would have an absolute blast. And other than like traveling and getting, and if you have to stay in a hotel and all stuff, it can really add up. But if you are within driving distance, just the gas, wear and tear on your car, maybe a little bit of your time, and then generally the show fee is not too burdensome, maybe like $7 to $10 for a given day. It's definitely worth it just to get that experience. All right, couple questions left. Coming along pretty good on the timing. Paper question. This is from rhedhaering on Instagram. Are there certain kinds of paper you definitely don't use with your fountain pens? So I took this to be like somewhat of a personal question for me. Of course you can use whatever the heck you want, but some things you may enjoy more than others. For me, I probably experience a little less diversity of bad paper than most people, given the fact that I have so much control over my paper usage in my work life. Not everybody's in that situation. All the paper that we have around Goulet is pretty decent paper. Even the cheap printer paper that we use, because we hardly ever write on it anymore, is still better than probably most copy paper that you would have. And then especially any given notebook or whatever that I'm writing in, like the throwaway pads that I have around here are like Rhodia pads and stuff like that. So I'm using really good paper all the time. So there's not a lot of papers that I'm like, no, I refuse to use that, because it's like, if it's not something that I'm enjoying using, I just don't even really think about it. But there's a few that I think, it's just kind of perks of my job there. Photo paper, coated, any type of coated paper, glossy paper, calendars, that type of stuff. I'm not going to get very far with that because of the coating. I don't even bother. Not that I run into that very much at all, but, just to let you know. Newspaper. I really don't come into much contact with newspaper in my life these days, but if I were to, I probably wouldn't be like super, hard pressed to try to make my fountain pen work on a newspaper. I would just kind of submit to what the newspaper is and use something else. But I really guess if you're doing a crossword puzzle or something like that, it's kind of the only situation. And there's people I know that really do that. Super fine nibs, something like a platinum carbon black, Noodler's black, X Feather, something like that is going to work pretty well for you. Heart of Darkness. Receipts. This is probably the thing that I actually run into more. When you sign your name at a restaurant or something like that. Some of the really hardcore fountain pen enthusiasts I know, they will like search to find good pen and ink combos for writing on receipts, just because they want to have like a complete 100% conversion lifestyle in their life to fountain pens. More power to you. I think that's awesome. Me personally, and this may sound like heresy, but I don't always write on receipts with a fountain pen. I know it's crazy, but half the time, I'll write it and my kids will grab it, or, something could get spilled on or whatever. The server takes it really quickly and smudges it, whatever. So I'm not super picky about that. I always have a pen on me as a backup, but I'll often just sign it with kind of whatever pen they give me. And half the time it's actually a lot of restaurants that I've been going to recently, they use gel pens. So that helps, like rollerball pens. Ballpoints I just really can't stand. That's the only time in my life where I use a ballpoint, and it's just so here's where I'll defend myself from my ballpoint using heresy. I don't use ballpoints. I really don't on a regular basis. I think even in my pen cup, which this was like my pen cup that says "This coffee is making me awesome." I keep like my nice pens in like there's a little Mike Dudek, custom block that I had made up. And I keep all kinds of pens in here at the ready. And then I have like 20 to 30 pens in my backpack at all times. And I usually have, just right here, I have 10 pens on my desk. And I have one in my pocket. I'm surrounded by pens all the time. But I do keep this one cup for just gel pens, Sharpies, pencils. I have like scissors and stuff. And I think I might have I have a Caran d'Ache ballpoint, which is a very good ballpoint actually. And I have one Bic Crystal. That's what I have. This is like my demonstrating a ballpoint if I need to pull it out in a video kind of thing. For me, I'm really going on a tangent here. For me, the whole thing of receipts is it's just enough ballpoint usage in my life to remind me of how much I love fountain pens. Not that I need a reminder, but it's just that little bit where I'm just like, yeah, no. It's just off enough. Once or twice a week, maybe, I'll use it and I'm like, gross. And then the last type of paper, wow, that was a good tangent. Nice solid, I gotta have like one solid runaway tangent. Last part of this question is stone paper. You know, it feels amazing to the touch, and it feels great on the nib for a little bit, but I'm not a huge fan of using stone paper on a regular basis. Not that I run into it often at all. I know a few people who use stone paper and really love it. More power to you. It's just not my thing for fountain pens, but that's all. All right, and I'm gonna close out this week with a personal question. This is from Nathan Lake on Instagram. Many people enjoy fountain pens because of the sentiment that is attached to them, signing their mortgage or marriage licenses or whatever. Is there a particular pen that you've used for milestone moments, either in your personal life or during the life of your business? Okay, part of the reason I wanted to answer this question is because I swear I've answered this question before. And I searched for like 15 minutes on my own YouTube channel and couldn't freaking find it. So if I've answered this before and you remember it, please forgive me. But chances are, if I can't remember it and I search diligently and can't find the answer, that you probably don't remember it either. I swear, it's like after so many of these Q&As, I think I'm losing it. But either way, maybe I've answered it, maybe I've not. But either way, I'm gonna answer it for you today. So I've hit a couple of milestones that have warranted signing actual paper. I write in like journals and stuff like that all the time, but like in terms of this is a momentous kind of thing where I feel like it matters there. Even in like business dealings and stuff, you know, the fountain pen community is pretty small. A lot of it's like word of mouth, handshake kind of thing, or electronic documents, secure electronic kind of things. So just like sitting down together and formally signing a thing is just not as common as it used to be, at least not in my world. But anyway, there have been a couple of milestones that I've had where I've actually sit down and intentionally thought, what pen and ink do I want to use? Because I want to one day sit down in a Q&A and say that I did this. Of course, no one's ever going to check or care or whatever, but yes, I can say that I know that I did these things. And so that's, you're validating my thing. So starting with my own marriage license, you know, Rachel and I got married at 22. We were fresh out of college. This was 3 years before I even had fountain pens on my radar. So unfortunately, our marriage license is not signed with a fountain pen. It was signed with, as I said in the how to use a ballpoint video, a 10-cent stick of nonsense. I don't remember what it was, completely unmemorable pen, but the event itself, I remember we were like at the church ready to get married. We actually signed it like, 15 minutes before we got married. And then the priest was like, well, you're actually officially married now, whatever. No, wait a minute, I didn't see her. No, that can't be right. It was afterwards. Never mind, I can't remember anything. Rachel remembers so many details like this that my brain is literally just like, you don't need to remember it anymore. Punt! And then I think about something else. Anyway, Rachel's going to shake her head when she hears about this. So my mortgage, I do remember that. Not our first mortgage, because that we got before we were selling fountain pens, yes. I had to get my timeline right there because I was making pens when we bought our first house, but we were not doing the fountain pen thing. So that was signed with whatever. But our second house, the one that we currently live in now, I do remember when we signed that one, I thought about that and I was very intentional. So it was before we had created any of our own kind of custom things or whatever. But I remember it was a Lamy 2000 and I signed it in Noodler's Black. So that I do remember because I wanted it to be like very permanent and very kind of stately or whatever. So I used Noodler's Black. And I think I thought that like it was a legal document, so I had to use black or whatever. Now I always ask, So that's what happened. The other significant document we had is when we set up our will for, we had the house, we had the kids and all this kind of stuff. And we were like, yeah, we have a business, we have kids, we have a house, we should really get a will in place. And this, part of the reason I wanted to take this question is to give you a gentle nudge, a gentle reminder to set up a will. If you haven't done that, and you have kids especially, or a business, or some like significant assets or anything, it's really a good idea to set up a will. It amazes me. It's the one thing that no matter who you are, how much money you have, everybody knows that they're gonna die someday. But at least in America, somewhere around half the people that die don't have any type of will or any documentation whatsoever. So I'm just going to encourage you, it's not a fun process because it costs a little bit of money. You have to think through all these different scenarios of if you die, what happens to your kids? What if what if you're maimed and you're a vegetable, but you're not dead yet? What happens to you there? You got a living will, you got all that stuff. It's super not fun to think through all that stuff, but what's also not fun is having that stuff happen and then somebody else having to deal with it when you didn't decide your stuff. So just a little friendly guilting. If you haven't set up a will, it's a great idea, and maybe if you can use some motivation of like picking a pen and ink to use to sign it as motivation for you to get it done, well, if even one of you does that, I will consider me to have done my job here today. Not that it's my job at all. I'm really not trying to make you feel bad, but I'm just trying to say, hey, like, it's really a good idea to get that stuff squared away. So for me, with my will, I used my, I wanted it to be very like iconic. So I used my custom 74, my faithful blue custom 74 with Noodler's Liberty's Elysium, which is at least partially bulletproof. And so I had it permanent. And I asked our lawyer, I was like, is it cool if I sign in blue ink? He's like, you can sign in whatever the heck you want, as long as you sign it. So I was like, cool. And that's what I did. So anyway, different spin. I definitely didn't have the guilt you into a will component to my last question. But I'm 34 years old now, and I'm parenting children that like have opinions and feelings and reasoning now. And I'm like, I need to really make sure that I'm clear about some of these things. And maybe some of that's rubbing off on you all. Sorry if it comes across as the dad lecture on that one, but so be it. Question of the week for this week is, do you find that your pen and ink choices match other aspects of your personality? Is it kind of reflective of who you are and how you express yourself, maybe in your clothing design or your paint color choices or something like that? Or do you find that your pen choices kind of bring out another side of you that somebody might be surprised to learn about? I'm curious just if you can think about your own self a little bit, kind of like what side of your personality does your own kind of pen and ink choices make for you? And then I have another writing prompt for you. This will be, I think, the third week in a row that I've done a writing prompt. But for those of you who are looking for a reason to use your pen and inks, I'm going to give you one. So, we recently redid our website, which was rather challenging. So my prompt this week is going to be challenge related. So my question to you is to not publicly share anything, but just for yourself, write out by hand about a challenge that you had to overcome and then what you learned from it. So make it a one-pager, make it a half-pager, whatever it is. Just put your pen to use. It'll make it happy. That is it for this week. I did pretty good on the time, gotta say, Andy. Pretty proud of myself on this one. Oh my gosh. I hope you all have a great week, a great weekend, or rest of your week, or wherever you happen to be watching this. Be sure to check out the new gouletpens.com and let us know what you think about it. We love especially the encouraging stuff. My team really gets motivated to hear the good side of things. They're hearing plenty of bad. Don't worry about that. But we're working through stuff every day, making improvements every day. We're rocking and rolling. Our spirits are really pretty high, but we always appreciate a nice little compliment or word of affirmation here and there. I just hope this has been enjoyable for you. I'm just going to give you a little extra 30-second bit here at the end. I'm just still so amazingly honored that you all sit down with me week after week. I don't get it. Really, I mean, I get it. That's why I do it. I care, but I'm amazed. I'm just amazed and honored by your attention. I didn't plan to say that. Just that's what I'm feeling right in this moment. I'm just really honored and just thank you. And thank you for the support for me and my team. I'm just literally living the dream here. Getting to do this, getting to interact with you all, put my gifts to use helping you. It doesn't get any better than that for me. Anyway, that's my little gushiness, my little squishy ending to the Q&A this week. Hope you have a good one. Thanks for watching, and right on.